Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Google Analytics Multi-Channel Funnels webinar. We're so glad that you joined us today. As I just mentioned, my name is Sarah, and I'm joined by my colleague Jason, and we're on the Google Analytics marketing team. We'll be moderating today's webinar, so if you have any questions, you can write to us using the chat window on your screen. As I mentioned before, we've already taken some questions in advance on our moderator page, which was linked from the blog, so we'll be responding to those questions today. And any other questions we receive during the live event, we'll be responding to in a blog post later this week. So with that, it's my pleasure to hand it over to Bill Kee, who is our product manager for multi-channel funnels. Bill, please take it away.
Thanks very much, Sarah. I'm really excited to be here today because we've got some exciting new capabilities within Google Analytics to talk about. The multi-channel funnel reports, which I hope many of you have seen, we launched a few weeks back, give a whole new set of insights into how your customers are finding you online, learning about your products and services, and ultimately converting and making purchases online. So I'm going to talk today about the reports themselves, how we've seen them being used, and share some tips on how you can get the most value out of them. And then, as Sarah mentioned, we'll take some time to answer some of the questions that have come in through Moderator at the end. So before I jump into the reports themselves, I want to step back and talk about the problem that we're trying to address here with multi-channel funnels. So online marketing allows advertisers to tie their marketing efforts to metrics like sales and lead generations and other types of conversions in an incredibly powerful way. You can actually tie them directly to the marketing touch points that were there. And really that makes online advertising more accountable than almost any other form. But one of the problems with the approach that's generally been taken in most tools and most capabilities that advertisers have access to today is that conversion, that sale or that lead or whatever it is that you ultimately end up setting as a goal gets tied back to the last marketing touch point that occurred prior to that. And of course, that doesn't really reflect the way that most people learn about products and learn about brands online. There can be many touch points, and those touch points don't all occur in a single channel. They can occur across many different types of media. So customers can learn about your product through a post on a social network, see display ads, engage with paid and organic search, and then ultimately end up purchasing after an email promotion. And the tools today that most marketers use would only look at that email promotion as having any value in having driven that purchase. And that really has a tremendous impact and limiting impact on the way that marketers are able to work today. I was talking recently with the VP of marketing at a large global travel company, and I thought he phrased it well. He said that marketing under the last click model is like having one arm tied behind your back. So you know there are these channels and these marketing strategies that you could employ to help your customers particularly learn and become aware of your products. But when you tie everything to the ROI metrics that a last click model delivers, you're really limited to those types of touch points that occur at the very end of the purchase process. And so that's what we're looking to help expose with multi-channel funnels, is allow you to see that full picture and give you the data that you need to better optimize your marketing. And so with the reports that we have, you're able to see all of those touch points across the channels that you see here. So you can see in a single picture how your customers interact with paid search, organic search, display clicks, affiliates. That's a really powerful use case that we'll talk about in a bit. Social networks is another one where customers are trying to figure out what role is played, and this can help somewhat with that. Email marketing, direct, and others. And I think the really powerful thing here is that you can see these all in one view. They're not siloed, so you can understand how they're working together, understand which channels might be assisting or cannibalizing others, and really begin to get a full picture of, or a picture that's much closer to the way that your customers actually interact with your marketing. So we expose these out in a set of 5 reports. These are available to all Google Analytics customers today. All you need to have is goal or e-commerce tracking set up, and it just works. There's no additional setup required. I'll talk a little bit about what's in the reports and then talk about some concepts and some use cases associated with them. So the overview report gives you quick insight into how your conversions have assists involved, so that you can look beyond the last click and also see how your channels are interacting together. The assisted conversions report is one of the most powerful. It gives you those metrics that let you compare the last interaction model to models where you see how channels are assisting conversions. We have path length and time lag reports, which give you insight into the buying cycle, how many interactions it's taking for a customer to make a purchase, and the amount of time that's elapsed from the first interaction through the conversion, so that you can get a sense of how long the buying cycle is. And then finally, we have a top paths report that lets you see the actual paths that were followed on the path to conversion, so that you can see how display can interact with paid search and interact with other channels as well. So I'm going to talk about a few of the concepts in the reports so that you can get a sense of the terminology that's there and understand what they mean. So if we look at a conversion path, you can think of it as a series of steps. And so a user could interact with paid search, could have a social interaction, more paid search, direct, and then convert. And so we have different names for each of these that can give you insight. So there's the first interaction, which is the Google paid search in this example. All of the touch points that occur prior to the last interaction we call assist interactions. So these would essentially be a set that when looking only at the last click model, you wouldn't be paying attention to. And then of course there is the last interaction, and this would typically be what you'd be looking at today. So looks like I just need to let the slide rebuild for a second here. And we'll get to that last interaction. There we go. So that's what we call the last interaction. And then finally, there's some metadata that we overlay on top of this that you have access to. So there's the path length, which in this case is 4. That's the number of interactions that took place. And then finally, there's the time lag, which is the amount of time from the first interaction to the time of conversion. And in the reports today, we have a maximum look-back window of 30 days. So we would look back from the time of conversion 30 days and include all interactions in there. So I'm going to shift now to talk about some of the types of questions that the advertisers who have been using multi-channel funnels have answered, and some examples of how they've done so. So you can see them there. We'll start with social. That's an area where a lot of advertisers are trying to understand what role is being played there. So what we're looking at here is a screenshot of the assisted conversions report, and this is actually data from the Google Store account, so where people can go online and buy Google T-shirts and things like that. And you can see here that we have segmented down to the social network sources. There's a channel groupings tool within the reports that I'll talk about in a bit that can help you auto-categorize these. And then we see the actual individual sources there. So photos.blogger.com is actually a source. There's Google+, Facebook, Twitter. You can see them listed there. And there's a few metrics associated with these that I want to walk through. So the first is the last interaction conversion metric. And you can see here, this is basically the number you'd typically be looking at when trying to determine the number of conversions that this channel drove. And so for that first example, there were 25 conversions touched. What we're adding with this report is this additional metric called assisted conversions. And this is the number of conversions that the channel touched, but was not the last touch. So you can see in this example that the photos.blogger.com referral source actually touched an additional 87 conversions. So that means that there was some interaction there that had previously not been taken into account in the conversion path. There's some more value being added there. And the comparison between those two metrics is really an important thing for doing this analysis. So we expose this ratio between the two. It's the assisted to last interaction ratio, or sometimes I call it the exposure to closer ratio. And basically, the higher that number, the more often that channel is serving as an assist. And the lower that number, the more often it's serving only as a last interaction. And you can see that there's actually some dramatic differences here. So in that first example, there's a much more assisting going on. It has a ratio of almost 3.5. And you can see that for some of the other social touch points that are above that. They're typically playing a bit more of an upper funnel role. But you can see at the bottom there's stumble upon referrals, which are actually most often playing the last touch role. And so you can see even within the social channel that there's some dramatic differences between the types of social interactions that are there and the types of sources. So you can really use this report to, A, gain insight into how some of those social channels may be delivering more upper funnel awareness generation earlier in the process, and then also compare how different social sources are compared to each other. So the next use case I'm going to talk about is also using the assisted conversions report, and this is around affiliates. So one of the challenges that marketers have with affiliate marketing is understanding what role was played by that affiliate in delivering the conversion. Affiliate marketing is great because you pay for the conversions that are delivered, but if there are multiple affiliates for the same conversion, or affiliates plus other forms of paid advertising, you can be paying multiple times for the same conversion. So if we look at a particular example from that chart, in this case, a travel customer is having conversions referred by Kayak. And at the end of a period of time, there are 40,000 conversions claimed by Kayak. And it's true when you look at the report that there were about 40,000 conversions touched. But you can see that of those 40,000 conversions, 32,000 were actually assists. So there were other touch points involved at some point. And therefore, you could dig in and understand, was there multiple affiliate touch points? Should we be paying a full bounty essentially for these conversions as if it were the only touch point, or should we take into account the multiple touch points that occurred there? So this can really help with understanding the value that affiliate channels are driving, and allow you to negotiate those conversion rates and conversion delivery prices with affiliates. So the next example is actually from one of our early testers of the multi-channel funnel product, Amari. They're a hotel chain in Southeast Asia. They've got beautiful hotels in Thailand and other locations. And they asked the question of how long it's taking for their customers to convert. And specifically here, that would be booking a hotel room. And so they looked, in this case, at the customers who were coming in through paid search. So they wanted to know, for a customer coming in through paid search, how many interactions is it typically taking to convert. And what they found was that almost 60% were actually converting in one visit, which kind of surprised them because they had thought there would be more touch points and consideration and comparison over the purchase funnel. So the action that they took on the basis of this was to actually restructure their landing pages. So knowing that these visitors who were coming through paid search were actually lower in the purchase funnel and more ready to purchase, they took the page that was on the left, which was more generic to the property, had many steps to actually make a booking, and changed it to the page on the right, which was more deal-focused, presented prices up front with specific rooms. And they saw a significant increase in bookings, 44%, as a result. And I think the takeaway here is that while landing page optimization is always a best practice and something that many of you are focused on, they're understanding where customers are in the purchase funnel, what stage they're at in making a decision to purchase when they visit from a particular channel can really help inform what you optimize around. And so having that data to back up a change can make a big difference. The next example is also from Amari in this case, and they wanted to look more broadly, so not just those customers coming in through paid search, but all customers coming in through all of their channels. And in this case, they found the opposite, which was that 57% of their conversions actually required more than one step. So they wanted to understand which channels were assisting and how they could potentially speed up that process so that they could get those touches in on a faster basis and convert those customers. So one of the channels that stood out as doing quite a bit of assisting in this case was display. So basically for every one booking where display was the last click, there were 4 more where display was assisting, and they had a relatively limited display budget, so this was based on a small set of data. So the action that they took on the basis of this was to increase their display coverage because they now had some hard metrics to tie the display touch points to conversions that hadn't been seen in the past. So prior to this, about 1% of their conversion paths that included advertising had display. And after the increase in coverage, about 10% did. And this resulted in an 11% increase in bookings in a short period of time. And this was an example of how being able to look beyond the last click and see how a channel might be playing a role in the conversion process that had previously been ignored, the customer is really able to make some more informed decisions about budget allocation. So these are some examples of how the reports are being used, some of the questions that you can answer with the reports. I'm going to shift to talk about a kind of framework for getting started. And so I think this is good for both advertisers who are trying to dig in and get a first look at the reports and see how they can get value out of them, as well as agencies who are working with their clients and trying to determine how to provide the most value. And so this is just a simple framework to get started. So the first question, and I'll walk through how you can kind of answer these and go through the reports to get at them, is understanding, is there a funnel? And I think this is actually a really important place to start because this can really vary across both the type of advertiser you are as well as the type of goal that you're measuring. You can actually find that for some goals, like a simple lead form, there can be very few touch points in advance. And so that could mean that either it may not be worth a tremendous amount of time in investing in exploring these sort of different approaches to attribution because you just have a very short sales cycle. It could also mean that you're not investing in any touch points that are higher up in the funnel because you can't really measure what you're not doing. So first answering that question of is there a funnel is really important. The next would be, if you've established that there's a funnel, which channels are assisting? It's really the next major question to ask. And we'll walk through how you can do that. I've given some examples already. And then finally, how are these channels assisting? Looking at how they're interacting with one another. Are they working together? Are they cannibalizing? Getting a sense of that. So in the first example, is there a funnel? The first thing I do is usually go to the path length report. And so this is data taken from a travel customer. And you can see it makes sense. Travel is usually a complex booking process. In this case, over 70% of the conversions and revenue are happening over multiple interactions. So there is quite a bit of a funnel there. Similarly, if we look at the time lag report, over 54% of the conversions for this customer are occurring after more than a day. So we've established here by looking at these reports that there is a funnel. Sometimes I go into these reports and see for a customer that 95% of the conversions are taking place with one step only. So here I then go into the question of which channels are assisting. And I immediately go to the assisted conversions report and sort by the assisted to last interaction column. And here I've actually created some special channel groupings, which I'll talk about in a minute on the left. And that it broke out display as an example in this case. And you can see that actually, in this case, had a very high ratio. So there's a large number. I think there are about 29 last interaction conversions that would have showed up under the last model, but there were an additional 400 plus conversions touched by display earlier in the process. So this helps call out display is probably something I should look at a bit. So then the next step from that would be to go into the top conversion paths report. And so here I've looked at those paths containing display, and I've actually used a tool called conversion segments to do that I'll talk about in a moment. And I can see here that display is occurring before direct interactions, it's occurring before paid search, organic search, and there's many, many of these types of unique paths. And I can begin to dig in and see which display campaign might be working with which search campaign, which keywords are following display, what are the types of things that people search for after having a display interaction. So you can begin to get that sense of how the channels are working together. So the last couple of things I want to mention here are around some of the tools that I've referred to that are part of the reports that you can use to gain greater insights. The first is channel groupings, and I was referring to that a little bit earlier. And this allows you to group together your various traffic sources into buckets that are meaningful to you based on the type of marketing mix that you have. So there's a set of default channel groupings. You can actually see them here that are auto-categorized for you, but you could create your own. And so you could go in and define, maybe for you breaking out a particular type of campaign strategy is really, really important. So if you have a discount group, for instance, you could advertise or you could group together those marketing touch points that related to your offers or your discounts and begin to see how those interact and affect throughout the conversion funnel. So just an example of how you could do that. Here I've gone in to build a custom channel grouping, and I'm defining a group called branded search. This is a really common use case to understand how your branded search compares to your non-branded search. And so I'm doing this for the Google store, and for us, a lot of the branded search terms come in containing the word Google or containing the word YouTube, and then I've specified the ad distribution network to be Google search. And you can see at the bottom there that will be classified as branded search. And then I could take this grouping, create another one for non-branded search or generic search, and compare what role are they playing. And I can actually see here, this is the assisted conversions report, that the generic search is actually doing, relatively speaking, more assisting than the branded search, which makes sense and confirms a lot of what people expect, that generic search can occur earlier in the process and then be followed by other touch points. And that's what we're seeing here, and I can then dig in and understand which generic search terms have those high ratios, and perhaps there's more value there that I can get out of those touch points. So that's an example of what you can do with channel groupings. Another example of a tool that's in the reports that's really powerful and I want to make sure you take advantage of is conversion segments. And so for those of you who are familiar with the advanced segments tool in other reports in Google Analytics, that tool allows you to segment visits based on attributes of those visits, so where the visitor was coming from or how much time was spent on the site and things like that. This is a very similar concept, but it allows you to create segments based on the attributes of a conversion path. So you can see here, for example, you want to see paths where the first interaction was paid advertising or the last interaction was direct. And you can then understand how those visitors who had those types of interactions behave differently, or their path lengths different, things like that. You can also define your own segments. I have some examples over there where any interaction was a generic search or any interaction was a branded search. And so an example of the type of analysis you could do with this here is comparing those visitors whose last interaction was direct to those whose last interaction was paid advertising. And this is the path length report, and so we can see that segment of visitors whose last interaction was direct more frequently had some prior interaction. Only 67% of them convert on that one visit, and they've had previous visits prior to that. Whereas those visitors coming in through paid advertising, a higher percentage of them are converting on that one visit. So there's kind of a difference in the behavior there, and you can think of the direct touch point, which is intuitive in many ways, as requiring touch points before it so the customer can learn about your site. So we've reached the end of the time, and I just want to step back and talk about a few takeaways from this that you could use to take action with the reports next. So, I would encourage you to start out by answering that question, do you have a funnel? And remember that this can be different for different goals, even for the same advertiser. You might have very shallow goals and goals that require a much longer process for customers. So segment those out and look at them differently. Learn which channels are assisting. Use the assisted conversions report and the ratio that I showed to highlight those channels. See how channels are working together using the top paths report. Use the channel groupings tool to create groups that are meaningful to you based on your marketing mix. And then finally, take advantage of the conversion segments tool to zero in on those particular characteristics of the visitors that you care about to understand how they're learning about your products and learning about your brand. So those are some of the takeaways. We're really excited to have you use the reports to continue to improve them as we go forward and get your feedback along the way. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sarah.
Thank you so much, Bill. Thank you so much, Bill, for that great presentation. And thanks to all of you participating in the webinar. We saw some really great questions come through. And just as I mentioned at the beginning, we're not going to be able to answer all of those questions now, but we will be responding to them in a blog post later this week. And we'll send out an email with the link to that. Now I'm going to turn it back over to Bill, and he's going to respond to a few questions that we got on our moderator page prior to the webinar. So here, Bill.
All right, so looking at the moderator page here, the first question that got a lot of votes is why are more than 85% of assisted conversions, those with a path length greater than 2, always the exact same source, medium, or keyword combination in the path, all the way down to lengths of 6 or more. So this is a question that I get. There's kind of a couple of different contexts in which I'd say to look at this question. The first is that there are many paths that actually do have repeat interactions, where the customer is essentially coming back through the same channel several times. One of the insights to take away from that may be that you could optimize the content that's being shown as a result of that interaction, for instance, to try to convert those visitors faster. There can be cases, however, where the tracking code is installed in such a way, sometimes with the e-commerce tracking code, that results in essentially multiple sessions or multiple visits being started, and in that case, I would if you see significant sort of repeat behavior here that appears to be likely from the same visit, I would take a look and just verify that your tracking code is installed properly. This can sometimes also happen if your visitors leave your site and come back during the same purchase process, which can start up 2 different sessions. So I'd encourage you to take a look at that. And if you do see issues, please report them in the forums, and we can follow up on that. The next question is there a limit to the number of custom channel groupings that can be created? And the limit is 25 per profile. So as you're using them in profiles, that would be the limit for them. But you can go in and edit them and change them as you use them. The next question here is, if I set a campaign tracking cookie expiration time to the same session, a time of 0 instead of the default 6 months, does it affect the multi-channel funnel analysis? Yes, it would. So the way that at a high level that the paths are assembled is that we look at the conversion and the visit where the conversion occurred, and we look at the cookie, the Google Analytics first-party cookie for the visitor at that time. And then we look back at the previous visits in the preceding 30 days that are also associated with that same cookie. And then we look at the traffic source essentially for each of those visits and then assemble the path. So if the cookie is expiring in the same session, there essentially will not be previous sessions or previous visits associated with that same cookie. So that is one thing that making the change that's described in this question would have an effect on the multi-channel funnel reports by not including that full path length. The next question is there a way to segment people that came in via non-branded keywords and converted on branded keywords? And I'd also love this for organic and paid too. Yes, you absolutely can do this, and this is you could do this using some of the tools that I showed. So using the channel groupings tool, you could create groups for branded and non-branded keywords, and then using the conversion segments tool, you could specify I want to see only those tabs where an assist interaction was non-branded in this case, and the last interaction was a branded keyword. And you could do this also for organic and paid. The next question is there a way to see a total value of a source medium? So currently a medium can assist and assist itself, so it would have both an assist and a last click, which is true. So if a medium or any touch point or channel it had a two-step path where it was an assist and a last touch, it would be counted for both of those. So this is really a question about how you would then go about distributing the value across those touch points. And the tool basically, right now we're not providing the ability to actually distribute the value across all of that. We're exposing how the assist is occurring. And part of the reason behind this is that there can be a lot of complexity in actually distributing the value across the path with many different sort of options and challenges associated with that. So what the reports give you insight into is how a channel is assisting, but it doesn't calculate a value for that assist. And that's really something that can be very specific to the kind of advertising mix that you have and the type of marketing strategies that you employ. So that's something that we can look at longer term, but right now is something that you're not able to do with the reports. The last one of the last questions here is in the top conversion paths report, the user is comparing the number of conversions for a specific goal with the goals report, and the numbers are not the same. Why does that happen? So one of the differences that is important to be aware of is the multi-channel funnel reports are the data in them is actually slightly behind the data in some of the other Google Analytics reports. So whereas in the other Google Analytics reports you would have fresh data usually at the end of a day, the multi-channel funnel reports can be about 12 to 24 hours behind that. And that, depending on the date range that you search, could sometimes result in differences between the two. So if there's new data that's in the other reports but not in multi-channel funnels, you wouldn't be able to see it there. So you can look at the date ranges there. The other one of the other differences that I'll address is that you can also see differences in the way that direct visits are handled. So in the other Google Analytics reports, if you have a touch point from a channel like search or display or any other channel that's then followed by a direct visit and then a conversion on that direct visit, the attribution is actually ignores the direct and goes back to the channel before that. Within the multi-channel funnel reports, because we expose out the entire path, you will actually see those last interaction conversions attributed to direct. So that's another difference there. So those are all the questions that we have time to get to right now. We're running just a little bit over, so I really appreciate your staying with us and for taking the time to learn more about the reports. Look forward to hearing your feedback in the coming months and rolling out new and improved features to the reports as we go along. So thank you very much for your time, and we'll see you next time.